Hi, welcome to JJ's Productions. I'm back with another Thrawn book review. On my own episode 6 or 7 now, and I'm still struggling to say Thrawn. Anyway, let's get on. So we're on chapters 13 and 14, and at the end of the last chapter, Thrawn and the Thunder Wasp crew were ambushed by buzz droids over Umbara. So it was quite an interesting place to leave a cliffhanger. You know, if anything, it wasn't like the cliffhanger to this chapter, which was basically dun dun dun. So yeah, that was a little bit more exciting of a cliffhanger rather than this one. It was like, okay, you can put your bookmark in here. You know, it's all right to leave it here, and I couldn't do that. So. As I say, it picks up over on Bara. Buzz droids are swarming in. They say there's about 300 of them. And it's quite an eerie start to the chapter, just in the sense that you've got the Admiral Gendlin of the Imperial Star Destroyer foremost. He's basically he's commanding this defence. And then you've got the Thunder Wasp and 2 Imperial corvettes. And we're on the Thunder Wasp with Thrawn, and you've got the commander Cheno, and you've obviously got Vanto, and Cheno really doesn't react well. You know, he wanted one last battle to go out on, and he isn't exactly living up to how he would have liked to go out. He's basically just saying, fire, fire, fire. And yeah, it's not really command that's just basically giving orders. So it was quite an interesting start. The idea is with Thrawn, he's just observing, he's taking in what's going on, and then just when it looks like Chano's losing it, he's not said a word for too long, Thrawn takes someone's position, says, right, you go there, I'll go here, doesn't ask for permission, just absorbs command essentially, which worries Vanto. And between him and Vanto, they manage to work out a pattern that the buzz droids are attacking in. They try and get Gendlin from the foremost Star Destroyer to coordinate and take out essentially what's controlling the buzz droids, but he's unwilling to support them, believing it could cause civilian casualties. I actually do question that. Would it have done? I don't believe that chapter actually covers that. So if ever there is a follow-up to this, I would like it to be proven that yes, it would, because I think it would be interesting that Thrawn was pushing that, even though it wasn't the most war efficient method, if you like, the one with the lowest casualties. So it would be interesting if that was called back on, but I'm not sure it will be. Anyway, the idea is once that doesn't happen, Thrawn basically determines spots in the flight patterns of the buzz droids where they're at the weakest, and the coordinate attacks to shoot them out the sky or space. You don't have sky in space, so yeah, so that's basically how the battle went, and it was quite interesting just how it managed to explain itself, because you don't want a written battle to be drawn out, or at least I wouldn't like that. You know, if it's a 1v1 battle, it makes more sense because you can feel the emotion and the thoughts of both combatants. But when it's Star Destroyers versus buzz droids, no, you don't really want that drawn out too much, because, well, for starters, the buzz droids aren't characters, they're essentially drones. So, you know, you don't particularly want them being the stars of a chapter. And equally, Cheno was quite interesting to see how he turned out. You've got Vanto on the sidelines observing, but you really just want to see how Thrawn solves this problem, which is what the book's mainly about. But yeah, I'm glad it wasn't too prolonged as a battle goes. Anyway, after the battle, the Admiral Gendlin, he basically says he's going to get Commander Chano's head on the block, and Thrawn attempts to accept some of the blame for his part in superseding orders, and Chano prevents him by basically taking all of the blame. And later on, when they're just back up aboard the Thunder Wasp and about to part ways, Chano pretty much admits he wasn't good enough and he'd rather someone like Thrawn lead the Empire on into a better place. So I did like Chano's character. I'm a bit upset that he was basically, I wouldn't say he was a pawn, but I'd say he was a useless piece on the board that was basically just put on there to help Thrawn ascend twice in one episode. So yeah, it's a little bit annoying. I think he was quite, you know, even if he was just basically a self-sacrificing piece, I still think it's a shame that it was such a such a waste of a sacrifice in a way. You know, it would have been interesting to see if the court martial and what had happened there. Maybe we will, but yeah, I'm curious what if anything does happen there. Anyway, the idea is after that there is, you know, they part with mutual respect, so there wasn't any issues there, and after that, Eli comes to Thrawn and they start discussing the attack, and their attention turns to Signy, or as I couldn't remember his name in the last episode, Night Swan they're referring to him as, or at least an organisation or a leader called Night Swan. And it's the idea that Thrawn gets a bit megalomaniac, becomes a bit of a megalomaniac, and even Vanto recognises this, because Thrawn is believing that Night Swan is actually targeting Thrawn, or at least he's trying to show Thrawn what he's doing. So he believes that the idea that the smugglers in the previous chapter were pretty much right in front of Thrawn, they knew details about Umbara. You know, it just feels like too many clues were given to Thrawn, and he feels like Night Swan is essentially showing off. So I am curious how much of this is true, because I can believe that one of Thrawn's weaknesses is ego. You know, I do believe, you know, even when you watch a TV show, he comes across as someone who doesn't believe he will ever be defeated. So I am curious if there is a character who could best him, maybe slips up at the wrong time and Thrawn takes advantage, but someone who is capable of actually bloodying his nose. So I'm curious to see what happens with Night Swan, or Signy, or whatever his name may be. So after that, the idea is that they believe that Night Swan is actually targeting, I wouldn't say neutral worlds, but worlds that have got mining facilities like Arinda Prices. And they're targeting them so that Imperial occupation occurs, and then they can smuggle out of Imperial mines. The idea being that, say, an Umbaran mine is harder to smuggle something out of than an Imperial one. So I like that. I think that's a clever way of bringing in Arinda from her side of the story. And I also think that, you know, it's a good way of explaining why Dunium is such an interesting thing. And yeah, as far as plot goes, I actually think this is a clever plot device, or I wouldn't say an inciting incident, but it's a MacGuffin of sorts. You know, it's what they're all going to rally around to solve. So yeah, I'm enjoying this little aspect. It's a little bit dry in some ways, but I still think it's clever how they've come up with it, especially because with Price it's got a personal element, so I am quite curious what will happen. But yeah, that was about the end of chapter 13, and it was the end of Thrawn's part in this episode, just for the fact that chapter 14 is all of Price. So yeah, I'm still waiting for some connective tissue with these two characters. They had that meeting a couple of chapters back at the event, and it was basically just fly and you'll miss it sort of thing. So I'm hoping that there's something stronger, because when you look at the blurb, it does say where the ruthless Arinda Price could be Thrawn's most potent ally or a brutal enemy, and that hasn't happened yet. I mean, yes, of course, it's a plot across an entire book, not just, you know, something that drops in chapter 2 and suddenly it's all the way to chapter whatever. But equally, I can't help but wonder when their actual story together will start, because, you know, even if it's just butting heads, you want to see it, and I feel like we're getting close to it, and I'm looking forward to talking about it. But right now, it feels like the two of them have been apart for too long in the novel. Maybe in hindsight, when I'm, you know, at the end of the book and I've seen what happens, I'll disagree with what I've said here, but right now I'm just eager to see it or read it, and yeah, that's not really good from my point of view. So anyway, we'll just go and move on. As I said, this chapter nudges it closer. It starts off with Price in the same place we left her off, pretty much, but a year on. So she's been working in that little office, for lack of a better description, for about a year now, and essentially she's lost contact with her friends Juahir and Driller from the previous chapters. So it just happens that at the start of this chapter they invite her to dinner. Driller invites her to work for him in what is it he does? He's part of an advocacy group, and when we were introduced to Driller, Price was quite dismissive of that role, saying, "Oh, you know, they don't have much influence, these." And then now she's got a very uninfluential job. She's like, oh, go on, it'll do me better than this. So it's very true to her character. You know, I can easily believe Pryce would suddenly go back on her own word and basically trade up. So, yeah, it's just what I like about Pryce's chapters in this. She's very much willing to sacrifice what she believes in to push forward. You know, you got the impression she didn't want to sell the mine in her first chapter. Yet she knew that not only could she succeed in politics and get back to Lothal and get the mine back, but she could also essentially afford to risk it. You know, she's very self-determined. And the weird thing is, you wouldn't get that from the TV show, so it is something I'm enjoying reading, because in the show she does come across as very cold, not cartoony, but, you know, very I wouldn't say one-dimensional, but two-dimensional. You know, there's not a lot of flesh on her bones. So I'm enjoying reading the bones to her character, because it certainly means that when I rewatch Rebels, I'll be thinking of the three-dimensional Pryce I've got here. So I'm looking forward to carrying on reading these chapters, or her perspective, if it switches back to Thrawn. So, as I said, she's offered a job. Even though she tries to act coy, she does jump at it. And yeah, a bit of time passes. They don't specifically say how long. It could be hours, days, weeks. And she's been working for Driller. So it seems like she's living the life she wanted, or getting closer to it again. She's back in the Senate, or at least in Senate circles. She's meeting with influential people, so she's pretty much in her element again, or close to it. And the story picks up with the idea of Pryce working for Driller one night on what is coincidentally, it feels coincidental anyway, that Driller's got a theory that there's been an unusually high number of Imperial takeover of mines. Just so happens to be that Thrawn was looking into that. Okay, I know novels have got a novel, you know, you've got to have the story mix in, but I thought, come on, couldn't it be that she just stumbles on it on her own, rather than someone else just happening to put it on her desk and say, oh yes, this is a bit of a, you know, I just thought the whole thing was a bit convenient, but hey, I don't mind. I don't think that bit's the important bit anyway, but I just found how it was just literally put on a desk. Oh yeah, it was a bit funny. So yeah, the idea is she assesses the paperwork. She does agree 21 mines have been taken over in the last year or so since she left for Lothal, and she admits that's odd. She also notices that the most recent one had Captain Thrawn's name on it, and she comments on the fact that she notices he's had promotions in a far faster rate than members of the Royal Imperial Navy tend to. So I would assume at this point she is going to keep an eye out for him by name, if not in any particular circle she may swim in. So I assume very soon they will meet again, but yeah, that was just basically a nod to say, yes, Arinda remembers Thrawn. To be honest, by the sounds of it, it sounds like a very odd person to forget, but yeah, that was just like a recognition of that, and then she just leaves to go home. And then this is where the rest of the story takes it over. It was a bit of a weird end to the chapter, to be honest. It was the idea that essentially she's getting a lift home on a turbo lift, which I'm assuming is the idea, because as you see in the films, Coruscant's very tall, but you also have the underground of Coruscant, which you see in the TV series. And essentially, it's the idea that she's getting the turbo lift down. Is it down or is it up to her level? Either way, she's getting the turbo lift to her level where she lives. And it doesn't stop. She ends up on the wrong level, which is a shady level. She's told by a friend, Dewey here, to go and get to the nearest turbo lift and she'll come and meet her. And on her way there, she gets ganged up on. You think, oh yeah, this was bound to happen. You can't go into the shady end of the village and not get jumped upon. But yeah, well, apparently you can't anyway. That's like the rule of stories, apparently. Anyway, the idea is she gets jumped. She sort of fights him with the words a little bit, but nothing too aggressive, because she knows she'd get she'd be overpowered too easily. So just as it looks like they're going to actually go and attack, Dewey here comes to the rescue with someone with the character's name is Oatless Dos, and apparently, even though it's Dewey here who does all the fighting and gets these guys off Orinda, Otless does nothing, and apparently it's because he's a bodyguard for an important Imperial. I have got no idea who it is, but it certainly sounds like someone very important. You know, I'm thinking, you know, how far up the food chain are we going to go before you can not say the Emperor? So I know it could be Vader, it could be Tarkin, I don't know, it could be any of those, but really, you know, you're not going to mention names. You think, sure, he's training to be a royal guard. So we'll soon see. But the idea is, after the rescue, it's the idea that Dewey here asks Otless if he can train Price in some self-defense. He agrees. Price recognizes that she's setting the two of them up, and she admits in a monologue she doesn't care. So that bit I like as well, because again, from the TV show, you wouldn't think of Orinda Price as someone who's got friends or even has romance in her life. So even though it feels a bit weird reading it, it's still interesting from a character point of view. So yeah, I'm liking what they're doing with Orinda, or what Timothy Zahn did with Orinda, but I'm curious even more to read what happens next. So that is what I'm going to do. Overall, I thought these two chapters were strong. You know, I thought there were a few convenient plot points. You know, I've touched on them as I've gone along, but nothing boot-breaking. You know, it's just basically where the plot's got to push through, and maybe just a bit of convenience has got to go, you know, just slap itself on the table. So yeah, if you've enjoyed this review, or this chapter review, leave the video a like. If you've actually watched it, I appreciate it, because I know my viewership is very low for this, but the way I'm looking is I'm going to carry on the series till the end of the book. If, you know, if the viewership doesn't pick up at all, then I can say, I've read the book, I've got something out of this. But yeah, if you can leave a like, I'd appreciate that, just to sort of say, well done, keep it up. Other than that, if you've got any ideas for the series, because I can't really throw visuals in there, and I haven't got a lot of background music, so if you can just think of anything that you'd like to hear, or, you know, thoughts, or just any suggestions regarding the series, let me know, because content-wise, it's a bit hard to do anything other than just talk. I wish there was. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. Like and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. Hope to see you in another video. Bye for now, everyone.